Every single day that you wake up with breath in your body is an opportunity to do something different.
And that's when I started therapy. And that really changed my life personally, yes, but also as an artist.
It's hard for me to create something original when I'm being influenced by something that somebody else did.
And just like a farmer sees promise in a young potato, it's how God sees promise in you.
That's power. That's power. And don't let anybody diminish the value that you bring to a space.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to walk you through my presentation about how to creatively resource your goals. So I came up with this because I feel like obviously it's the new year and we're always talking about our goals and what we want to do. But for me, myself, I always found that I either had the same goals and a different version of the same goal, or I was still working on it just at a deeper level, but I didn't feel really energized by it, or I couldn't figure out a way to make progress to actually get ahead. So I started to think about creative ways to actually resource your goals that aren't just about money. And I'll start off by saying I understand that money is a great resource. It's one that I personally really enjoy, but I think we can get very linear in our thinking around just money as the main resource. So with that said, I'm going to start my presentation, and let me know if you can see it in the chat. I'm also looking at your questions as they come in, but let me try to get my presentation up. Perfect. Here we go. So with that said, welcome to the Goal Workshop. My ideal is to go over everything. There's so much I want to say and show you guys, but we have a limited amount of time. So I really just want to walk through the main things I think you should know and the tools for you to move forward with this year powerfully, because it's already been a crazy one. So with that said, I'm Asia. I'm the founder and creative director of Die Free Studios, a web design and marketing agency that really takes a therapeutic approach to helping founders and their brands to grow online. So I always like to say it's a therapeutic approach. Like, what does this mean? Because I noticed that over the years working with clients, they all kind of came to me when I would ask them what their vision was, with a really kind of vision that didn't really feel like it excited them or that it was truly their own. A lot of times I feel like we have an ideal goal that we should have versus something that is really authentic to us, or you need help pulling that vision out of you because you might not actually have clarity on what you are really working towards. It's very easy to get caught up in the day-to-day. So when I noticed this with a lot of clients I was working with, I really kind of made it my mission to explore deeper ways to connect with them, pull that vision out of them, and then create, obviously we're talking about websites here, but create a step forward that really aligns them with where they want to go. Because I feel like, especially when it comes to branding and websites, sometimes we are presenting what we think it should look like versus a really, really authentic presentation that meets us where we're at today, but also creates the bridge to where we want to go. So that's why I always say it's a therapeutic approach, because I'm not just asking you what you want on your website. I'm really kind of going back to the foundation and figuring out, what are you really doing this for and what is your purpose? And then we build from there. So with that said, a little background about me is that I was born and raised in Los Angeles. We obviously went through a lot already this year, which is another reason why I really wanted to talk about resources in this way. But it is my home city and proud of it. I founded my agency, Die Free Studios, in 2016. So it's going to be 9 years this year, which feels very crazy to say, but I'm happy to be here. And then I really started coaching around goals in 2021. Just a little bit of a backstory. Every time I work with a new client through my agency, we go through a process called discovery. And I nicknamed that brand therapy because, again, so much of what I was doing was way bigger than a website. And what I noticed through those calls and why I started coaching is that I really realized that I can help you build your marketing and your website and get you started online, but it's really up to you, the founder or the creative, that is responsible for making your brand grow and really move in the direction you want it to. So I really started talking about coaching and coaching my clients because honestly, our business goes as far as our own self-development does. If we have bad habits or if we have scarcity mindset, our brands can't really grow as big as they could if we work through those things. So I really started coaching as well. But with that said, today I've kind of merged the two into my services. So I create websites for founders. I bring them through my process that aligns them with their goals and their bigger vision. And then at the end, they get a website and a marketing strategy that is truly authentic to who they are. So I today combined all of the things that I'm really passionate about into my own services. So just to give you a little overview of what we're going to talk about today is obviously it's a new year. I already said to people that I know that my new year is starting in February because January was the longest year ever. So today, I really want to talk about goals that stick because like I said before, it's so easy to have the same goals or just even bigger visions or bigger ideas of those goals, but sometimes they don't feel like they energize you or really are pushing the needle. So I'm going to talk about how to create goals that actually stick. And then the second part is figuring out what's working and what's not working, because again, it's really about revisiting what our own patterns are and seeing how we can shift things and really move our goals forward. Then the third thing are resources. That's why we're here for, but I'm going to talk about creative ways to think about resources that are actually sometimes even more valuable than a dollar itself. And then the last part is controlling the controllables. So at the end of the day, our resources, we tend to think of them as things that are outside of us, but we ourselves are completely full of resources and we can control a lot within our own controllables. So I like to really focus on that too, so that we don't feel stuck when moving through the year with our goals. So with that said, the first thing is goals that energize you. So I like to look at this two ways because in my own experience, I've come across clients that either have a vision and they're very clear about where they want to go, or they don't have a vision at all, which I started to dissect how to work with them in that capacity as well. So the first thing you want to do is really get clear or honestly understand what bucket you fall under. If you have a vision that you are excited about and that you know you're working toward, that is a great way to start breaking down your goals into smaller steps so that essentially you are creating the micro steps to reaching that big vision. And you can do that with any vision that you have. But if you have no vision, I would almost say start working backwards. So I actually worked with a client recently as a consultant, and she's a photographer. And when I got on the phone with her and I was asking her about her vision, she said that she didn't have one and that she didn't know what it was. And she was kind of in an area that felt gray in her life. And we've all been there where we're not always excited or super clear about what's next, depending on what's just happening in our world and our lives at the time. So I actually wanted to work backwards with her. And I started asking her, when's the last time she felt inspired? What did she last look at that she either felt a little bit jealous of, or she even found herself judging? Because those are hints to what we actually really want, things that we're kind of like, why do they have that and I don't? That's actually a window into what you want for yourself. And you can start building goals around that feeling or just noticing that judgment. And then you can also think about creating goals based on what is not working or you just don't want in your life anymore. So you can almost start with the negative and then flip that into a goal that you can actually create. So if you're currently at a job that you do not like, then you can start to think about what is a goal or a vision I have for myself outside of this job, or what would it look like if I didn't work here? You can start to build no matter where you're at. So that is a really, really big point that I like to emphasize. And then the next step is to think about a goal that makes you feel energized. I don't care what the goal is, just choose one that you actually feel excited to move towards. And then from there, you can think about the baby steps of that goal. So I'll use myself as an example because I found myself stuck in this same pattern of goal setting and realizing that I had the same goals year after year, but I don't know if I was really making progress. And so this year I said, I really want to get good with going to the gym. That sounds a little bit vague vague. And to be honest, saying that didn't really excite me. It didn't really make me feel like there's something I can do in this moment to do it. Granted, I could just go to the gym, but sometimes you're just not in the space to execute on the goals. So I actually broke that down into deeper goals of, okay, why do I want to go to the gym? I want to feel healthy. I want to feel energized. And then I started asking myself, what are other forms of health or something even working up to going to the gym again? And so I started thinking about, I actually started talking to ChatGPT, which that is a huge resource that we all have that I really encourage everyone to really use, maybe for everything. But I started asking, what are other things I can focus on for optimal health? Because that's the true goal between working out, that we all want. And so I actually started asking, what can I do to detox? That is a huge step into optimal health. What kind of foods can I eat? So even though my goal was to get into the gym, I knew that I wasn't in a situation to do that right at that moment. Or say you're sick and you physically can't go to the gym. I wanted to still feel like I was working on that goal. And so that's why I always say have a backup goal or baby step goal, so that no matter what's happening in your life, you can still work toward that thing. And to me, specific of, okay, maybe I'm just going to focus on gut health for this first month of the year, February. That actually felt more energizing to me because I can order my things online. I can make that with my breakfast every morning. So that's why I really emphasize creating goals that energize you, because we can have the ideal goal that we want, but we also have to be very honest about where we're at today. So with that said, that's a little workshop and I'm going to give us 5 minutes. I'm going to go on mute, but I really want you to think about what things really do help you cultivate your goals right now. So these are what I call vision prompts, and they're helping you to start to get very clear on what these goals are. And we're going to have another time to write and figure things out as well. But let's just take 5 minutes to think about what you want to do. So again, I'm going to go on mute. Please grab your notebook and pen. We'll meet back here at 5:20 p.m., maybe sooner. I just want to make sure we get through everything, but take a few minutes to just jot down or put it in the chat, your answers to some of these questions, and I'll kind of say them out loud. So the first question is, why did you start doing what you currently do? What inspired you, and what were you thinking about at that time? That can help you start to get back to that vision as well. So that's just the first one. You can go through them and see what resonates with you, but we'll pause right there and be back in about 3 to 4 minutes. Okay, start to wrap up your thoughts. I know that wasn't 10 minutes, but just start to wrap it up, and we'll be back in a second. Okay, so let's keep it going. So I know that was a super fast sprint, but the idea is to write what this vision is to help you become more clear on what those goals are. And while this is more a session about how to resource your goals, I do think it's important to get very clear and always revisit your goals. That's also a habit that I've personally been incorporating this year, is to actually look at and or write down my goals every single day so that they're at the top of my mind as I go throughout my day. I get started with that energy. So with that said, now that we have our vision, now that we've thought about it a little bit more deeply, I like to do something that's called a goal brain dump. This is where you write out a huge list, you don't judge it, and just explore all the goals that you think you have. This can be unrelated or related to what you think you want, but it's really your space to just dump. And once you've done that, you want to choose your 1 to 3 goals, no more, that you will focus on this year, because I like to really keep it tunnel vision and focus. When we have too many goals, we're really spread out. Another way you can think about what goals to choose to really pinpoint for the year moving forward is to think about what is the goal that, one, like I said previously, energizes you the most, but two, really think about it as an umbrella goal. So sometimes there is a bigger goal that we have that actually will automatically get us smaller goals that we already have. So that's where you can get really, really intentional around the 1 to 3 goals that you're thinking about for this year. And if you don't take the whole year to reach those goals, if they happen faster, even better. But you really want to, again, just keep it focused and streamlined so that you constantly know what you're moving toward, because that's how you see real change. Another thing I like to ask myself is, at the end of this year, what's the one thing I'll be very happy that happened? If only this one thing happened, I will be set. So that's another way to think about the goals that you choose for yourself. So focusing on those top 3 goals, think about what it will take to get there. What do you need to do to get, or to have in place to make it happen? And I'm always going to refer back to ChatGPT, but if you don't know, ask ChatGPT, because this is where we start getting into resourcing. This is where we start making our goals or that big vision very real. I think a lot of people write the goals down and almost kind of wish for it to happen, or we just visualize, which I'm a huge fan of. I'm not knocking visualization, but we also really want to start to get clear for ourselves what it's going to take to get there. So for an example, you can say, this year, I really want to start to do brand collaborations with huge brands. And that could be on my list, and I can do the cold emails or do what I think I need to know. But before I even start doing that, I need to start thinking about what I need to have in place, or what needs to happen before those brands are interested in working with me. So maybe that's me creating a few campaigns. Maybe that does take money to create those campaigns that they'll even be interested in me. But maybe I don't have to hire the models or the photographer. Maybe I know people, things like that. So I just want you to start thinking about what are all the pieces it's going to take to make that goal happen, because that starts to give you a clear picture of what you're actually going to focus on when it comes down to the month, to the week, to the day, because that's where I think our goals get lost in translation. Is like, how are we taking action on them today, or what do we need next to make it happen? And if you don't know this kind of goes into the next step, which is exploring and mind mapping the people, specific support, and back to money, the specific amount or tools you need to get there. A lot of times I'll hear people say that, okay, I just need $100,000 to do this, or not even that clear. They might just say, I need money to do this, but do you know exactly how much? Have you done the research to figure out how much things are going to cost to make whatever it is you want happen? So this whole idea around exploring and mind mapping around your goals is to really really make it so clear about the components needed to make it happen. Again, this is a step that I don't think people spend enough time on because they either start from zero and then jump to the end goal of what they want to happen without thinking about the steps in between. And again, I always say, if you get stuck, explore with ChatGPT, because to me, it's such a great research tool. And sometimes we're stuck in our own patterns of thinking that we can't think outside the box. And then something I always like to say is, once you've kind of figured out what next person you need to connect with, because also when it comes to our goals, it's really just about the very next step. Sometimes we get lost thinking about the huge goal all the time, when really it's like, what's the next step and how can I activate that? So if you're feeling bold, text someone to hold you accountable to your goals, or to ask for help. That's just one suggestion. Don't have to do it. But this whole thing is about really dissecting your goals. And so, spoiler alert, you are deeply resourced. Your resources are actually other people, your current jobs, it's digital tools we already have, it's money, but it's also you. This is a quick story behind where I came up with this saying of you are deeply resourced. And it's actually not my story, but it's something that irritated me so much that it stuck. But essentially, maybe 4 to 5 years ago, I personally was a part of this accountability group, and we would meet every week and we would go around and say what our goals were, what we wanted to attract into our lives, what we wanted to let go of. And we would repeat this every week. Every week I would come and say, I want abundance and I want more money. This is what my goal was 4 years ago or 5 years ago when I was in this group. I said it repetitively every single time. And every single time the lady came back to me and she would say, Asia wants to be deeply resourced. And I was like, I did not say that. That was not what came out of my mouth whatsoever. But she would always switch my words to say this. And it would irritate me. I did not like it because I'm like, I know what I'm saying and I know what I need, but she just switched it. And over the next few years, I went through what I like to call like a huge identity shift, where I was unlearning a lot. I was shedding old identities. I was really kind of stepping into a new level of who I was and what I wanted to be. And I started thinking, I also was at a rock bottom. That's important to say. I felt like I was at a rock bottom and I felt very stuck in my situation. And so I remembered this annoying quote that she always told me. And I started to think outside of the box of, if I were deeply resourced, if I had everything that I need, what would that look like? And again, not thinking about money. And so I started thinking about all of these other forms of resources and really living my life that day, not only just with the energy that I'm deeply resourced, but actually thinking outside the box of these resources. So I made a list of resources that have nothing to do with money. And these are all things that you can think about and utilize within your own life to help you activate this energy. And why I like this list is, and why I put it so deep into this presentation, is that really you want to be clear on the goals and the steps before you start thinking about your resources that you'll need. Sometimes we start here, or we think about the lack of resources that we have, and this doesn't actually connect in the right way, or we jump the gun too soon and start asking for things or trying to go to this list without actually getting very, very clear and doing our own due diligence of what it is that we need first. So just to quickly go over this list, and you can screenshot this page if you want it, or you can watch the replay, but the best resource is people and relationships and community. We don't realize that we are in community, whether you feel like you have a close group of friends, or even if you feel like you don't have the community, you do. And it's really about thinking about the people that you've connected with in the past. This can be mentors, it could be peers, it could be even thinking about what coaches do I need to bring in to really help myself reach my goals or reach my next level. But people and relationships are the number one, or I would say number two, because I think another one that I'm going to list on here is your actual number one resource. But the second resource is actually where you are in your environment. A lot of people feel like they need to be in a big city. I am in LA, so I guess I'm a little biased, but even if you live in the middle of nowhere, you can use that to your advantage. You can if you live in a small town, you might actually be able to make even better connections with people because it is more intimate of a setting. But you really have to, which I'm going to get to on another slide, rethink your mindset around what you have. And I jumped the gun. Okay, we're back. So your location and your environment is a huge resource, whether you live in a big city or you're around nature or traveling a lot, using your surroundings, visiting coffee shops, talking to people that are local to you is a resource. Another resource are things that we don't have to leave our house for, which are digital and physical tools. So you heard me mention ChatGPT. It's our computers, it's our phones. I listen to a lot of Gary Vee, whether you love him or hate him, and he always reiterates this fact that we have such power in our hands on our phones. But what we do is we waste a lot of time scrolling and we consume more than we create. That's another quote that I always say is create over consume, because when we're creating, we're actually pouring in and attracting people up to us. But when you're just consuming and scrolling and getting into all these other people's energy, you're not really in control of what you're taking in. So that is a huge tool that we have is our phone, and we can use that to look up things and to learn more skills and knowledge, which is the next one. That's a resource. What you know in your head is a resource. This is your expertise. It's things that you can trade with other people. It's bartering. Now, side note on bartering, if you do go this route and say like, hey, maybe you shoot pictures for me and I'll do this for you, just make sure you're very clear on your boundaries. Make sure that it is very clear what's going to happen, because that can get a little weird sometimes, but that's still a crazy resource to have. I've used it to my advantage a lot, and I've also not done it because sometimes it's not as easy. Another resource that we have I mentioned this before, is community and social capital. You can use your audience if you have a following on social media. Even if you don't have a following, you can still start to put out things that people can associate with you to attract more opportunities, to attract that next plug. You can use the people that look at you online all day or your connections to start to make inches towards your goals. So that's another thing that we don't think about. Also building a personal brand, your experiences and inspiration, things that really spark ideas in you is a resource. And I know this sounds very vague and out there, but I really am interested in this because, again, we don't really realize how blessed and how privileged we are with all of these things. The phone alone, our location alone, the fact that we have internet alone, the people that we know, whether it's friends and family. I think sometimes we look over our friends and family because they don't get what we do or whatever it is like that. But these are all things that are huge resources. And some of the hardest times in your life, it's really your friends bringing you a plate of food that is the biggest resource that keeps you from going over that ledge. So I want us to think about resources in more ways than what we just think they are, or more ways than just money. And then a last little thing that I put in the corner is have enough self-awareness to know what will actually help you move forward. So sometimes we know the answer. We know why we haven't reached our goal. We know why we haven't taken that next step to reach it. For me personally, I knew that I stayed in a lot of the same financial patterns for so long and I couldn't break the pattern. But for me, it's like, okay, I need to bite the bullet and spend an amount of money that I don't really care to spend, but for someone to handle it all. That was me being very honest with myself, because sometimes we have too many resources that we don't even realize that it's holding us back. And what I mean by that is I'm someone who has the ability to do graphic design. I can manage my own bookkeeping. I can do it all, but that does not mean I should spend my time, which is the biggest resource, doing that, my time and my energy. And so with self-awareness, I have to realize that, okay, in order to move to the next level to reach my goal, I really need to bring someone in, another person. I need to talk about this more. I need to build community around this thing more and really start from there. A bonus thing that I'm going to talk about before I get to this slide, and we're almost at the end here, is that another way to really galvanize around your goals and to really make progress is, and I guess it does kind of go under this section too, is building community, but very intentional. A lot of times, I actually remember speaking to a friend and she mentioned, I said, lean on your network. If you're looking for a job or you're looking for a new gig, lean on your network. And she was like, what network? I don't have a network. And I'm like, you do actually. And I know her personally, but I could tell that she wasn't thinking of all the people that she knew as a network or as resources. And so what I told her was that she should actually create a mini event or hangout around a purpose. She has a brand, create something around that and curate the people who come together, because that creates more resources when you're in rooms with people that you're connecting with for a yes to this is so key to elevation. It really is. But I feel like using the resources, say you don't like have the money or the connects or the knowledge, you can start to create or cultivate many communities within just the friends that you know, but around a specific purpose. And you have no idea what will be born out of that, or who might know someone who knows someone that can get you to your goal. And I love the idea of creating little events or mini hangouts around a central purpose, because again, that's using your resources to build community, to build even your personal brand, which is a resource itself, to really start to help move you and other people's goals forward. So my whole theme, I think I'm talking about this a lot, is community and people, but that is something that we don't think about. And it's really about getting creative about what you have in your control. So with that said, going to our fourth and our final point is thinking about what's in your control. I think so many times, as I said before, when we're making these lists of the goals that we have, or we're thinking about what we need to make something happen, everything is external. We're thinking about things on, I need money, or I need a place to host my thing at, or I need something outside of us. And to be honest, that is half of the thing that you need. That's half of those resources. But the other half is there's something that you can always control. There's something that is within yourself that you can move forward with. So I kind of made this list to help you constantly think about going back to what's in your control when things outside of you are not in your control. So to be honest, that is the habits and rituals you set up for your daily or weekly life. This is something that I actually coached a client around. I worked with her for a year. And again, another story, she was a writer and she had been sitting on a novel or a movie feature idea for years. I had known her since she came up with the idea, and she never could move forward with the goal of executing that feature film. And when I started coaching with her, we got very clear on what the vision was. She wanted to be the Shonda Rhimes within her genre. She wanted a universe of her stories all to live under her name, and her to build a life that really honored her highest creative self as a Shonda Rhimes, but obviously for her. And it really came down to, how do you actually bring that feeling into your everyday life now? And by feeling, I mean the habits and the rituals of the person that is actually living that. And so the first thing that we settled on, which sounds very basic, but it's really for her to write every day. And even though that sounds like duh, like just get in the habit of writing every day, it's not about I need to finish this feature today. It's about actually I'm just showing up to this goal, to this project every single day for a limited amount of time, and then moving on with the rest of my day, knowing that I poured into it bit by bit every day. And that turns into what are our habits and our rituals. If it's around fitness or anything else, it's how can I just the first step have healthy breakfasts? Even if I don't change my eating for the rest of the day, how is it just a healthy breakfast? So there's always habits and rituals that we can set up that are leaning toward our goals, even if we feel like how it's really going to happen is outside of us. We have so much that is in our control. And to what happened with that client, we realized that she had such a huge, busy, crazy schedule that she was unable to, or she felt that she couldn't do it all. Health was really important to her. Writing and creativity was really important to her. But at that same time, she was working crazy hours on set for shows that she already was writing for. And so by going through her whole day and holding her accountable and really doing a lot of brand therapy with her, we nailed the fact that she had 20 minutes in the morning that she had space of time to do. And in that 20 minutes, every single morning before her day got crazy, she showed up to her page and she wrote. It wasn't about executing or finishing it. It just was about showing up. And long story short, she ended up writing her full feature film. I think it got picked up. I have to check in on her, but I remember that being in the talks. She was talking to studios. She actually wrote 2 more short stories. And this was just all around that very, very small habit, and also knowing how to tweak it when things throw off your schedule. And so again, the goal isn't like this weekend, I'm going to execute this big goal. It's about the tiny increments over time that really build up to ultimately living the life you want. Because if we zoom all the way out and we think about our vision and our goals, this all comes down to just how we want to live our lives. And that's really why I personally focus so much on how does your day-to-day life feel, and how can you live the life that feels great today while working toward the ultimate life or lifestyle that you want. So long story short, long story long, that is habits and rituals, and why that's in your control, and why that's one of your most powerful resources that you can cultivate within yourself. The next thing is, what do you choose to believe about yourself, your goals, and your future? So obviously we're talking about mindset, which is in your control. This is something that I think a lot of people have to work on, because while we write these things down on paper, our sneaky beliefs, what I call them, is really what either propels us forward or holds us back. If you don't feel good enough or ready enough to talk to someone about your goals, or if you feel like you look weak for being in a place where you need support or help to make them happen, you are holding yourself back. That's what you're controlling. And so it's really about choosing to believe that you have support, that your goals can happen, to let go of other things that are blocks, I should say, that are holding us back to reaching those goals. Again, your brain and your mind is your biggest resource, next to time and next to people. So I keep saying everything is number one, but these are all things that we don't realize that we have and that we're in complete control of as we move toward our goals. And then the next thing is, who do you need to become to reach these goals? This is a big one, and this had me messed up for maybe a year or two, because as I mentioned before, I went through a period of what I felt like was unshedding, or shedding my old self, and really thinking about who is Asia in the next phase of my life. And really, when I got real about who do I need to become to reach these goals, that's what informed those habits. That's what informed those rituals. And so when you think about the person who has a lot of money or has that successful business, because sometimes it's not even about the money, it's about the type of business that we want to have. How do they show up every day? Who are they? What do they lead with? For me personally, right now, I'm service-based entrepreneur. Obviously, I build websites for people, but I made it a huge mission to think about who do I want to become to reach my highest self, my highest vision, which kind of has nothing to do with web design. But if I start showing up as this person now, which to me was, how can I give the best service to my clients now? That meant I have strong boundaries. That meant that I am always honest with them, even if the truth hurts. The other day, I had to tell a client she needed new pictures before we start her website project. And she didn't want to hear that because it meant more money spent, but she's going to be so happy. And I'm going to be happy that I gave her all the tools that she needed to have a better success or a better outlook. So that was a big thing for me, is how can I show up as my highest creative director self, as the highest or the best service provider, and who are they? What do they do? And that's the thing that's going to lead me into the next phase of what I need to achieve those goals. And then one that I think we often ignore, but we really need to pay attention to, is, what do you need to let go of? And this is a big one, because so many times we're focused on what do I need to get? What do I need to attract? All of that stuff. But a lot of times we need to let go of things. This could be judgment. I like this one because people don't realize that a lot of times you're judging yourself. You're judging yourself for how much you've accomplished within your goals or just in life. Or you're taking in judgment from other people's and letting that stick with you. So is that something that you need to let go of? You need to let go of past failures or fear or limiting beliefs or things that people told you. You also might need to let go of wasting your time and figuring out, what can I replace this time that I'm wasting or not doing things that are contributing to my highest self, and letting that go. And like I said in the last bullet point here, it's how do you choose to spend your time? So I have time starred because, again, I think time is our biggest resource, and it's the most valuable thing. We're all here for a limited amount of time, as sad as that is, but it's a reality. And so knowing that our time and how we spend it and what we put our energy into is our biggest resource. And so when we're spending so much time scrolling, or even just not doing anything, maybe it could be binging Netflix, sometimes that feels restorative, and sometimes we know that we are just wasting time and it's not really being fruitful to us. And so how do you choose to spend your time is how you choose to live your life. And I'd rather spend my time working toward the things that I want and becoming the person that I want to be and reaching my next level, because I feel like at the end of the day, we all really want to just live to our highest potential, no matter what that is. And so with that said, that is how you resource your goals. And I'm going to do a little recap before we close and give you some other things that, you might need to make it real. So just to recap, we went over how to identify goals that energize you. So this is really about not just writing the list of goals that you want. It's finding ways to get energy around them. It's finding ways to feel ignited by the thing. I gave the example of how I wanted to get in the gym more, but I wasn't really energized by that. So then I started exploring other ways that I can have optimal health and use that to get to a point to start starting. But I felt so energized when I realized, if I just made it a mission to eat healthy one meal or to sweat, I could go to a sauna for that. That feels nice and relaxing. That is something I feel energized around versus got to go to the gym. So find goals that energize you. It could be the same goal, but with a tweak. The other thing is to get specific and really dissect your goals. So we talked about how to really think about your goals in a broken down strategic way. It's thinking about the baby steps, what you need to make it happen. It's getting all the juice around the goal so that you have clear steps forward, or at least you have a step that will get you to the next step. And then the third thing that we talked about is if you think of money as your only option, think bigger. I have a little typo right there, but if you think money is your only resource, then you're not thinking big enough. You're not thinking creatively enough. And we are so resourced. We have so many ways that we can make things happen. Because another thing I'll say is that when you are working with people and you are connecting around goals and things that you want and creating together, that honestly is the juice of life. So sometimes I can think like, I can throw money at a thing, but really it'd be so much better to work with someone and collab and share our talents and our gifts and pour into each other and resource each other to make things happen. And so think about other ways, or just think creatively, because on top of it saving money, it also adds so much juice to your life. I don't know why I like the word juice right now. And then the last thing that we talked about is, what can you control in your current life? What is your mindset like? It's really thinking about control the controllables. That's the last thing that we talked about. So that's an overview of everything that we talked about. And then I can't end it without a reading list, because I love some books. But the first one is Overcoming Under Earning. It's really a book financially that really blew my mind. I have new money books that are amazing too, but this one was just pivotal for me when it just shook me to the core. And I think of that book more as a workbook, because it asks you a lot of questions that's going to make you go deep. And while we talked about things that are not financial resources, money is a big thing for a lot of people. So I highly recommend that book. Another one is The Artist's Way. I am rereading it right now. And this is a book that is, I would say, for creatives, but it's honestly for people who don't deem themselves creatives either. So either if you've read it before or you need to read it again, I always recommend this book, because it teaches you how to show up for yourself every week, every day, through 2 practices called morning pages, where you free dump or you brain dump on the page for 3 pages every morning. You don't judge what you write, you just pour. And that just unlocks so many amazing things within you. It shows you all your resources. And then there's another tool that's called Artist Dates. And those dates are really about showing up for your creative self, but you can honestly switch that and remix that to be goal dates. So how are you going to go someplace that's going to inspire your goals even more? But either way, I really recommend that book because it's amazing. The other book is Atomic Habits. I talk so much about habits in this, especially as your own resource. And this book really gives you so many ways to show up for yourself and to use habits to really get to the life that you want. And then a last one that's very slept on is the compound effect. So this just kind of really shows you visually how every baby step actually compounds into a wildly amazing result, no matter what direction that we're going into. So that's my list, and I'm going to read the question. So we have a question. Do you have suggestions on how to make those resource collabs successful, especially for creatives where the nature of the work is flowy? If you can explain a little bit more what you're thinking about, I can answer very specifically, but do I have suggestions on how to make those resource collabs successful? I think, I have some ideas. So I think really it's being very clear first before you even go to someone else, and to be very clear on what your goal is. So being very clear on what you want to create together for yourself. Be very clear on what you're getting out of the collaboration as well. So this means that I'm going to just use a basic example of like, if I want to create a campaign and I need a photographer, I need to think about, what can I also give to that photographer? Or is this the right photographer for me? Are they willing to show up in the way that I'm willing to show up for them when we're talking about a collaboration? So I think it's being very clear on what you both want and being very honest about what you both want out of it. And then thinking about ways together on how to make it happen, because so many times collaborations can not go well. But I think you can also, I think it's just about being very clear and testing it out. Don't put too much pressure on it. And then you said, especially for creatives where the nature of the work is flowy. I think you have to be very discerning about how you work best. So for example, if my work is flowy and if it's a vibe, and if I like to just like go with the flow, you might need to pair up with someone else who's either the exact opposite of you that will keep you on track, or someone who operates exactly the same way. Because if it's two opposites, it's not going to make for a great collaboration. I hope this makes sense. Let me know, like ask more questions if you have any more thoughts around this, because working with others is hard. Another thing that I like to think about too when it comes to collaboration is when I reach out to people, it's for a very, very specific reason or for a one-time thing, not something that's ongoing or that we might have to build over time together, because that's more like a partnership. But I think about very specific needs, and then I think about a very specific way I can contribute back to them. Again, I hope that makes sense. Okay. Yeah. Have very clear, super clear on goals. Yes, you have to. That's why I always suggest doing all of that pre-work ahead of time, because when you map out all the components of what it takes to make a goal happen and you can see it for yourself very clearly, you can then look at it and say, these are things that I can do myself, or these are other resources that I can need to make that happen. And then here's how I want to work with this one person if they're open to it. You know, here's my one ask from that person. But I think it has so much to do with the work you do before you start asking other people to help you or support you or to collab, whatever it is. So yeah, it starts and ends with you always. That is the most annoying, but the very freeing thing at the end of the day. But I think if there aren't any other questions, I think that might be it today. We have a few minutes if you want to put things in the chat, but thank you guys for joining. And if you want to continue to follow me or just chat with me, you can find me on social media. I'm on probably most platforms, Instagram, TikTok at Asia M Dav or Die Free Studios. And then you can always connect with me via email or follow our newsletter where I talk about things like this all the time as well. So Thank you, Nakia. She said you are so encouraging. I try to be. But yeah, thank you guys for joining. I'm so happy to go over this. I hope you guys have amazing time resourcing your goals and just always knowing that you are in control. But I think that is it for today.